Hello there, this is Debbie Heiser, and I am so stinking excited to share this new season 4 with you. And I can't believe that this is already the 4th season of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. And I just want to thank each of you who listen. And my hope is that the tools, the thoughts and experiences I share, as well as the work I've done to love myself, love others, and love the work I'm called to do, that also helps me lead a truly lit up life, will help you move into a more lit up life yourself. A few things to look for in this season. Super excited to share that we're going to be coming to you now every week with episodes jam-packed with information to serve you. Every other week, you'll hear from a guest who's leading a life that they love, and I'll be asking them to share their stories, how they got there, and any thoughts or advice that they can give you, our loyal listeners. We have new music too, and I'm so thrilled to introduce this song called Ride, sung and co-written by my friend, Miss Jackie Wilson. And she, along with her collaborators, Tyler Banks, David DJ Lee, and Chris Renee, are super talented and generous, as this song fits perfectly into the thought of stepping into your best life. To follow any or all of these talented folks, check out the show notes for their social handles. Thanks again for listening. Enjoy season 4 and do us a solid and leave us a rating and a comment to help us be able to share more with people across the globe. Now, let's get started with this episode.
You're the only one who really can transform your mind.
Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. I am super stoked to have my friend Chris Angell with us today. And Chris and I go way back. I don't remember what year I met you. It might have been the end of 2018.
Yeah.
And Chris is
feels like longer than that though.
I know it does, right? In a good way. And Chris is actually the reason I am doing podcasts today. I reached out to him through our good friend Misty and got a hold of him to say, hey, I'm trying to step out from behind the mask, and this is one of the steps that I'm taking to do that. And he set me up with a co-host and got me started to doing podcasts. And then I kind of took it over myself. And Chris is like, I don't know, Chris, I look at you and I see this man who wants to make a difference in the world and makes a difference in the world. Like, you're a big part of my journey. I don't know if I've ever told you that.
Thank you.
And, like, you make such a big impact on people's lives. And there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that too. And, and how you maneuver through that. And for me, it's just so interesting to have you on the show because of all of the different things that you've done in your life and where that's led you to today. And so I can't wait to have this conversation with you, but I'm going to have you introduce yourself and tell the listeners what you do to serve in this world, because you can do a much better job at that for yourself than I can. So
it's so fun to be together in this context. I always love when we get to talk and brainstorm about business, but there's something about a podcast conversation where it feels official and it feels it's fun and it's all good. So thanks for having me. I love the conversation of this show, Lead Your Life. I feel like what I do is I help people find their important work. Everybody, I believe, has important work to do. And a lot of my, important work sometimes can look like life coaching. A lot of my clients are life coaches in some form or another. But it's when you start to step into that world of important work, it's easy to get lost in comparison. It's easy to feel like you haven't been there yet, so you're a fraud or a poser. It could feel like you don't know what to say because it's all so new. And so that's what I do. I help people find their truth. Everybody has the truth already. I just help them find it, speak it, build a tribe around it. And when you come from that place, it feels congruent, it feels real, it feels true. In a whole world of uncertainty, when you step into your important work, that truth, that is your lived experience, brings certainty into the uncertainty. And so that's what I help people do is carve out a path for them to make their impact in the world through their important work.
You're an inspirer.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I can't help myself. It comes out. It just comes out.
Yeah. So tell me, Chris, like, as you work with people, what are maybe some of the biggest stumbling blocks that you see that people have finding what their passion is?
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of like the curse of all the ideas. Like sometimes we're inspired by so many things. You could read a bunch of books, and if I went and looked at your bookshelf, you'd have so many books that have spoken to your soul, and you're like, look at all these things. How do I consolidate all of that into the thing that I'm here to do? So there's usually some chaos of abundance, some chaos of too many inspirations, and I don't know how to pare down what I'm here to do into a one-liner. What's my elevator pitch? I don't know. Too much to say in a sentence. But that's what I help people do, is figure that out.
And Chris, what got you into this? Like, why? I mean, I know you've done other things in your life. Tell us a little bit about your past, and like, what was the precipice? What was the thing that caused you to say, I want to go do this instead?
There are like a couple moments, I think, in my story that got me here. One is, I remember in college saying, it's funny how in life, when we're younger, like our important work sort of shows up, like we don't know it, but there's this thing we feel when we're younger. I remember saying, I want to be a leader of the masses and a discipler of a few. That's how I said it in college. Probably wouldn't say it that way now, but that's exactly what I want to do still with my life. Another thing I said in college was I want to be a professional friend. So
I love that.
I didn't know where I fit professionally. I was like, there's no degree called professional friend, and there's no career path. So I didn't know where I fit. I graduated college and didn't know where I fit. And I think I don't know if that's common, but I think it could be common if you're somebody who's sort of spirit led and you're looking for that thing that is your mark to leave on the world. There is no career path for the thing you want to leave a mark on the world for. That's why it's your mark to leave.
Right. It's the uniqueness, right?
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know where I fit. So I, fumbled through some jobs and ended up reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was an important marker for me. That got me into real estate. I never got into real estate because I wanted to be a real estate agent or be a business person, but something about it caught my imagination, and I just followed the breadcrumbs and sold real estate for 6.5 years, then moved on to be a CEO of a real estate company. I had 200 agents in my office, did that for 5. That's what brought me to Spokane, by the way. And then here was the next moment that was really important. I was at a class, leadership class, and the person leading said, you should work less and you should work inside your unique abilities. And it was just one of those moments, the heavens parted, the angels sang, like, I just had this moment, like, I can't, like, doing this job. I love leadership, but this was starting to feel more like management than it was leadership. And I remembered in college wanting to be a leader of the masses and a discipler of a few, which to me meant speaking, teaching, and coaching. Speaking, teaching to the masses, coaching a few. That's what it was. And I started my own coaching company in 2011 on the heels of that aha moment. Like, this is what my life is for. And even in that, I didn't know exactly what my conversation was, what this was the next step, was to step into my important work based on what my unique abilities were.
And you know what I love about that, Chris, is one of the things that I talk about is one of my definitions for faith is that something drops in for you and you have faith and you take the first step, having the faith that the next step will appear once you take the first step.
Yeah.
Right. We don't have to know step 12. We just need to know the first step. And then the next one comes to us. And by the time we look down, we're at step 12.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I hear you saying you did. And then you help other people do too.
I think that's part of leading your life, back to the title of your show, like, to lead your life is following those breadcrumbs. Do you ever see the Adjustment Bureau with Matt Damon and Emily Blunt, that movie?
No.
Well, it's a cute love story.
Yeah.
I don't want to totally spoil it, but it's all right. Even if I said it, it's not totally gonna spoil it. But there's such a great line in there. They, through chance, bump into each other and hit it off. But then there's this adjustment bureau, and they keep trying to move them apart from each other because they're not supposed to be together. Like what's written in the plan is not them being together. So
gotcha.
They keep getting adjusted, right? Like, you're not supposed to be together. but then they keep bumping into each other throughout this movie. And there's a point where they decide, hey, this is what we're going to be together. We're doing this. And it happens because Matt Damon's like, this thing, this way I feel about you, this being together, this can't be wrong. And there's something about the conviction that you feel when the heavens part and the angels sing, and you're like, this thing, I just feel called to do this. And you feel it so deeply that you're like, this can't be wrong.
Right.
And there will be all kinds of well-intentioned friends, family, circumstances that come along to adjust you out of this thing you feel a faith to follow. And they'll try to talk you out of it. You'll try to talk you out of it. But you'll always come back to this feeling of like, like this thing, this can't be wrong.
Yeah. Well, you make me think of, Chris, and I have a wide variety of listeners. And so I always say, for me, my faith base is God. So I'm going to kind of go there for a minute. Yeah. And I say, find whatever word works for you. Right. Yeah. But there is a story. And when I think about the disciples, right, you talk about being a disciple of a few. And I think about that. How many people thought the 12 disciples were nuts? Right. They quit their jobs. They went and followed this man through the desert, right, all over the place. And they thought they were nuts. Right. And so sometimes what we're called into takes courage, because to your point, you have all these people trying to give you their advice, which frankly is then in the victim game, because they're playing persecutor, trying to tell you what they think your life should be like. Right. And when and you're congruent with your values and what you stand for and where you're headed, like it just works. Yeah.
I mean, it works in that it feels true. Yeah. My path to trying to get here, it's like constantly up and down emotionally. Like, I think for a long time, I started to attach myself to certain results I wanted to see. So you commit to, in faith, you commit to this path and this important work. You're like, this is what my life is for. And if you're not careful, or I think it's just human nature, like, especially if that important work is done in the context of business, I started just to look for certain results to be produced to validate this journey I'm on. Like, oh, this is right, because what I do touches to go, what I touch turns to gold. Like that didn't happen. And then there's just the frustration of like, am I the person that can pull this off? Like, who am I to think I could, like, I've been trying this for so long and I'm not having near the results my vision is for. And so, I mean, that's just the reality of the hero's journey of you finding yourself and your own power on your own path,
Yeah, absolutely. I think of Luke Skywalker, right, in Star Wars.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's where I always go when I think about the hero's journey. And one of the things, Chris, too, that, I know I run into clients that struggle too, because we live in a society and in a culture of comparison. And so because we all have our unique spiritual DNA and like what we're called to do in this world and this important work, but we tend to compare ourselves to other people. And I find that to be one of the biggest hurdles for my clients, and the idea that they need to trust themselves, because we've learned through all sorts of different ways not to trust our intuition, not to trust what drops in for us. And then we question it. And then we get into what I call K-screw radio, right? And all these like thoughts happen in our head. And sometimes, I mean, I have an easy button sitting on my desk for a reason, because sometimes I find I create struggle, right? Because it's like, I think everything has to be a struggle versus it can be just that easy and I can just make the choice. But tell me, like, as you work with people, like, how do you help people through that? Because I know you and I both struggle with that sometimes too, as coaches. That's just, like you said, human nature. Yeah. But how do you help people through that?
I think the context is really important for, I was just having a conversation in my membership community today with who made up life coaches, right? And part of the conversation today was about leadership. And we were I was drawing some images. I was looking at, like, in life, there are things that you know, and then there are things you don't know. And most of our life is spent, 80 years, 100 years, most of our life is spent trying to move from things we know, trying to learn the things we know we don't know. Like, so that what we know is a bigger, portion of the pie. And then there's this whole piece of the pie that is like the stuff we don't know, right? Like, and so to me, comparison, the game of comparison starts in me trying to learn the things I know I don't know. So I don't know how to be a brain surgeon, and I don't know how to, make $1 million, and I don't know how to, there are all these things that I know I don't know. And there are people who do know how to do that.
Right.
And so I'm comparing how I'm doing with what they've taught me or what they know. But all of that human nature trying to learn the things we know we don't know misses the spirit of the expansive consciousness none of us have touched into yet. There are things, miracles waiting. There are perspectives waiting to be unlocked that none of us have pioneered yet. And so when I think about stepping outside of comparison, it comes from the context of, if you could agree that we are spiritual beings having a minor physical experience, we're spirit first, right, having a physical experience second. And from that place, we this is context. If you could also agree with me that we came here to see what we could do with this life. Let's see what we could do. Let's pioneer consciousness. Let's pioneer something new and further. I think that's what change is all about. Let's create change here. That's about doing something new.
Right.
And if we are all spiritual beings, whether you acknowledge that or not, if we're all coming from the same source and we're having this experience, then we are all pioneers of consciousness. Mm-hmm. And nobody could say I have it figured out, because if you have figured something out, then it's something from the past, not something in the pioneering future of consciousness. So to me, when you start to own the change you're here to make, you will realize that nobody has paved that path before. It's your path to pave. So how could you possibly compare?
Yeah, that's so true. And the law of I can't even say it today. Transmutational energy says it's all here and it's all here now.
Yeah.
Right. And we just have to claim it. Right. To your point, that opening of consciousness, it's here. We just have to step into it and claim it.
Right. Right. But then your fear, then this is probably where, this is where comparison comes in, because we're so afraid of being hurt, losing it all, taking a risk, to actually have the courage to dare greatly, to go out into the unknown, to pioneer it. It feels risky for most people. So what we do is we cling to what's safer. And from what's safer, I can now go ask experts and gurus, hey, how do you know what you know? Because I know I don't know what you know. So I want to learn just the little things down here. And it's our fear of, death, dying, and
that amygdala brain that takes
and survival.
And part of what is interesting, because I just taped a podcast around this and about this mountain. I started to call it a valley, and I'm like, no, it's not a valley. It's like a mountaintop experience that's between your comfort zone and your safety zone. Right. Like pushing out of the comfort zone, which is what I hear you saying, like step out of that comfort zone. And part of that comfort zone can be a trap, because we step into things we know we're going to be successful at versus taking the risk to step into that important work that we're called to do. Yeah.
There's a great book by Todd Henry called Louder Than Words.
Oh, cool.
It's talking about how to unlock the power of your authentic voice. And one of the word pictures that he shares is about if you picture like a tree, and at the base and the trunk of the tree, we're all climbing this tree. Like at the base of the tree are our influences, the people who have influenced me. And so in the beginning of my journey to say what I want to say or make the mark I want to make, how it comes out for me in the beginning sounds like Seth Godin. It sounds like Rob Bell. It sounds like the people that have been influential for me. The further I go in my message and my work, the more it starts to, I start to like, okay, now it's a little bit less Seth Godin and a little bit more Abraham Hicks. For now, it's a little bit, and I start to find my own little branch. And then the further out I go on the branch, the more I own it, because there's less distinction from others and more of my own words and language for my life experiences. And I think that's really important because, it comes back to the question of comparison. Like, in the beginning, when you step out on the journey, a lot of what you see and say comes from the things that have influenced you.
Sure.
But it's your job to go pioneer with your words and language the things that life has taught you. Don't just keep regurgitating somebody else's quote. What do you have to say? What do you say to the world? And that takes you out on your own branch. And if you can stay in the conversation and the impact of it, you know, there's a whole exciting world to discover, you know, that inspires people.
And Chris, let me ask you this. So, you know, part of this is about leading your lit up life, right? Like leading your life so that you feel lit up.
Yeah.
Tell me, like, doing this important work that you have, like, what fills your bucket with this? What lights you up with this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of it is, I think anytime any of us speak our truth, we get lit up. Like when you give words to the things that life has taught you, passion comes out. You don't have to say, you don't have to be loud like me, or you don't have to be, but you'll feel it. You'll feel lit up by your own truth, because this is what life taught you. So there's part of it. I think also part of it for me is knowing that there's an audience that resonates with it. It's harder to speak into a vacuum when there's no reflection back of like, this really made a difference for me. So finding your tribe is a really important piece to this, which is a lot of the work I do. And then I think having vision is important, because if you don't know what it's for, then you'll give up on the old Facebook game, and you'll give up on the podcasting game, and you'll be like, oh, you know, why am I doing this? So vision is really important. My vision, I think part of the trick for me is having a big enough vision that I can't see how to get there. I think sometimes we're so stuck on SMART goals and being realistic about our goals that we're so realistic that the vision isn't compelling enough to pull me forward. There's no future pull to the thing that I set out in my future. I'm like, okay, it's not vision, it's a goal. You set a goal, good. But if that goal isn't attached to vision, what's the point? So my vision is 1 million members, 1 million people coming through the distinctions I teach, the conversations I lead, so that they can lead their own conversations. To me, and this is totally made up, to me, that represents a tipping point in humanity, that if there were 1 million people having and leading their conversations, like you're leading your conversation, 1 million, that would create an energetic shift on this planet, and the world would change because there were that many people not in comparison, but leading their conversation.
Okay. So let me ask you, Chris, as part of a measurement, do you measure that people like me that were under your tutelage as part of that 1 million?
We'll see. I don't know. I mean, I guess I could. It feels like I'm cheating now, because they're like, I'm sandbagging. I got Debbie already. Debbie.
Well, no, I guess what I'm saying though, is if you're thinking about 1 million people, like you've impacted people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and part of why I bring that up is to me, I agree with you. And I just was having this conversation that vision and goals are 2 different things.
Yeah.
Right. And we have to make decisions from the place of that vision, like who and how you want to show up in the world here in the vision, not where you're at today. Right. But if part of that is getting 1 million people to go out and do the important work that they're doing, you know, like to me, I look at it and say, okay, if you're counting, I should be a part of that.
You're totally in that number, Debbie.
Right. Well,
totally.
And I say that just because there's so many people that you might be starting in your head right now, right? Or this last year, when in fact, you've been doing this work. Right. It just may have looked or sounded a little different.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those are the fun games you get to play with vision. You're like, how do I measure it? Like, I think to me, I started to be like, what I really like is 1 million members, like people who are members of my community.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, you could still be a member, but it obviously, like, the whole point is that from there it trickles out. So there'll be all kinds of people who have been impacted by this work that I'm leading. And maybe they were a member for a while and they weren't anymore. But, and so none of that actually matters. What really matters to me is that people's lives are changed and that they're leading their conversation, and be a member or not. But do you see, like, the whole point is now I have a vision that gives me context for how do I do it? How do I get there?
The purpose. Yeah.
Yeah.
And part of why I think I bring that in, Chris, is I talk a lot about the family in our head and how sometimes our critical parent can come around. And what I find a lot with my clients is we're our own worst critic, right? So that critical parent comes out.
Yeah.
And so we have this vision, but then we don't stop and reflect and say, wow, I'm doing this, right? Like it doesn't have to be that hard. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I have made an impact in people's lives. So yeah, part of it's the game and my little achievement orientation, but like looking at that and saying, yeah, the impact is already happening. Right. And I hear the difference of what you're saying with members, and that really that's not the important piece. It's the impact.
Yeah.
But
it feels good on the journey to know that there's
absolutely
results happening. Sure.
Yeah. Cause we can beat ourselves up and then cause ourselves not to go out and share the message we have for the world. Right.
I think we dramatically, I heard this years ago, we overestimate what we can get done in the short term.
Yeah.
We underestimate what we can get done in the long term.
Yeah.
But because we're so focused, on immediate results and, results yesterday, that our overestimation of immediate results, takes the wind out of our sails, and we don't want to play anymore. We're like, I don't want to play. Like, I'm taking my toys, I'm going home because but I read Built to Last and Good to Great from Jim Collins.
Yeah, I love those.
It's just timeless. They're so good. And he talked about the good to great companies, or maybe they're built, I can't remember which one it's from, but he talked about how, I think it was Good to Great. Once the good to great companies found their hedgehog concept, they found the thing that they were best in the world at, the average time to where they saw the big exponential uptick in results, the average of the comparison companies was 16 years. That for 16 years, they were pushing the flywheel of their unique abilities day after day at the flywheel, day after day after day. And it was 16 years on average that it took to see those exponential returns. The fastest was 6 years. And I say that because it's such a encouragement. It doesn't make it in those first 16 years. It doesn't necessarily make those feel any better, but if you could lean into, this can't be wrong. This thing I'm doing, my gifts, I want to be a professional friend, a leader of the masses, discipler of few. These things I know about me, and I'm going to show up every day and do these things I know about me, and I'll figure out how to make ends meet. We'll figure that out. But this is the thing I'm here for. If you could do that for 6 years to 16 years, I would guess, just because I think it's probably something in the laws of the universe, that there would be an exponential return if you were just pushing on that flywheel for 16 years.
Yeah. And you know what, Chris, I agree with that. But what I also find interesting, and I help my clients see this, and I had to look at this myself too, is like, I quit my W-2 job for the first time in May.
Wow.
Right. So a year ago, when this drops, I stepped into this full time. I'd been doing it as a side gig, but for the last 20 some odd years, I've been doing what I'm doing today. But sometimes we forget to look back. Like I remember when I first started selling Yellow Pages. So I'm really aging myself. Some people are not even going to know what Yellow Pages are when they listen to this. But when I started selling Yellow Pages, we used to say we sold hopes, wishes, and dreams, not Yellow Pages, because we were helping clients get more customers or clients so that they could make more money and go do what it was that they wanted to do. Well, what's funny is that's come full circle, because I say I help my clients with their hopes, wishes, and dreams, because too many times the business runs their life versus them running the business to then go have those hopes, wishes, and dreams. So I think sometimes too, we can get this narrow vision where we think, oh, now that I have this vision of what the future means, I'm starting today on that 16 years, when in fact, you may have been doing it for a while. Right. Yeah. Which can be an obstacle for us sometimes if we don't reflect. I'm also a firm believer that you can't live too much in the past. That creates depression. And if you live too much in the future, it creates anxiety. Right. So it's about being present, but I think sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit, I guess is where I'm going with that. And so looking at that if the fastest is 6 years, right? Like, then what does that look like? And
well, and you'll know when, like, the results will show up when they show up. So maybe it's 6 years, maybe it's 16. I agree with you. I think, like, if I looked back at my unique abilities, in some way, I've always done them. Like
Yeah.
it's about listening to people, hearing who they really are, even when they don't have the words to say it. Like there's this, each of us have the secret sauce to the thing we do. And we've had that secret sauce, like you said, like in our past, we've had it, we've used it. How much more if we go to something like Outliers or Talent is Overrated, those books, we look at the 10,000 hour principle, you'd be like, well, yeah, like if I look at my past, I've been doing it. How much more effective will it be now if I can concentrate it? I think that's the cool part, is you're not dividing your time now between a job where I sometimes get to use it, but it's versus I'm going all in on my important work and my skill set. And I'm going, my 10,000 hours are going to start to ramp up now, which actually for me, what I found, and even for my clients, is it creates a quantum leap, right? Like you can stay where you're at and kind of study the course. And, you have the old fable of the turtle and the hare, and that's not what I'm talking about, but you can quantum leap it because of the focus is what I'm hearing you say. Yeah. So Chris, thank you so much for being a part of this. And if my listeners want to get a hold of you and talk to you about how they can figure out what their important work is, where would you send them? Yes. Thank you. Facebook's always a great place just to reach out to me. It's like facebook.com/Chris.Angell with 2 L's. So there's a period between my first and last name. Or sort of the project I'm working on from now until forever, because this is how I start to lead others through finding their important work, is if you're a life coach of some sort or want to be, figuring out how to create recurring revenue is an important ingredient, because it's sometimes the thing that gives you the financial stability to step into the important work. So I host membership challenges for you to create your own membership within 30 days, where you're creating, upwards of $1,000 in recurring revenue within 30 days. If you're interested in learning more about that challenge, you can go to mygroundswell.com is my website, mygroundswell.com/membership challenge. And that just sort of shows you what that is and how it works and how to create recurring revenue in your business in as little as 4 hours a week. Fantastic. Chris, thank you so much again for being a part of the show. So happy for you. I'm so happy. I love this conversation again. Me too. Yeah. We need to do this more often. And with that, it's a wrap. For those of you that are entrepreneurs and you want to make a lot of money doing what you love without sacrificing what's important to you, please reach out to me, sign up for a 30-minute clarity call. I'd be happy to help you get really clear on what you want. And you can find that on www.leadyourlituplife.com. And with that, it's a wrap. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much.